Welcome back to Pittsburgh's Action News 4 here at noon. We continue to cover the verdict for Robert Bowers in the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting trial. The guilt phase of this trial has ended today.
Absolutely, and Bowers is now guilty of shooting and killing 11 worshipers from 3 congregations at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Squirrel Hill back in October of 2018. The jury also found Bowers guilty of wounding several other people that day, including Dan Legger. He was entering the federal courthouse this morning. We're going to go out live to Pittsburgh's Action News 4 reporter Bob Mayo. He was in the courtroom for us, bringing us those live updates as they started about 40 minutes ago. Bob, what can you share from inside of that courtroom earlier?
Yes, the newest information is what comes next, and in a open conference in the courtroom, a consultation between the judges and attorneys, we can tell you that this trial will resume in the penalty phase on June 26th. That was determined in the court today. The court had already indicated they would take a break of at least a week, and that is where we'll be heading back. I can tell you there were some other matters that were set into motion with this verdict. You know that in the several years we've been in now of preparation for this case, the defense has played some aspects of this very closely held information regarding possible lines of defense they may use, whether or not they'll invoke a mental health defense, what any mental health examinations of Bowers may have revealed. Was also a separate team of experts for the prosecution that were permitted to do a mental health evaluation and report. But all of that information has been held separately. The defense information held away from the prosecution information held away from the defense. So it's what almost sounds like a sort of diplomatic coordination. There was a notification in court today that the defense will have 24 hours to, well, first of all, by 1 p.m. today, a special envelope for delivery to the defense will be delivered to the defense, triggered as a result of this guilty verdict today. The defense will then have 24 hours to notify whether or not it will invoke a mental health defense. 12 hours after it gives that notice, an envelope will be presented to the prosecution. Then by 1 p.m. Sunday, the defense will have to respond to the prosecution. Again, all of this apparently dealing with mental health aspects. The judge said that he would like to convene the eligibility phase for the death penalty as soon as reasonably possible. So even the death penalty phase of this may be broken into 2 parts. There would be a portion that would deal with whether or not Bowers is eligible for the death penalty, and then if the answer to that is yes, whether or not the jury chooses to sentence him to death. Now, we're standing by here outside the courthouse. The jury is still inside. They won't have further work to do today, but they were instructed to stick around until it can be conveyed to them more information about the timeline ahead. But that's where we stand now. The penalty phase, both considering whether Bowers is eligible for the death penalty, and if yes, if he should be sentenced to death, will begin on the 26th. That could take longer than this penalty phase took, and that's the latest right now from the Pittsburgh Federal Court. Reporting live downtown, Bob Mayo, Pittsburgh's Action News 4. Back to you.
Bob, it's Shannon here in the studio here. We've watched your coverage and your tweets this morning, giving us this information in real time. In all of your years of experience as a journalist covering homicide trials, covering murder trials, in the difficult work the jury has to do. You know, in Pennsylvania, we don't have cameras in the courtroom. We can't see the jurors' faces. You were able to watch the jury as it took in not just the testimony from survivors and some of the first responders in this case, but looking at that evidence. Can you just react and give us a sense for how much work this jury has done up to this point and how they're doing, if you can get a sense of that, without actually talking to those jurors, of course? You were able to watch them in the courtroom.
Well, we can tell you much of the live tweeting that I've done has necessitated my being in an area where there's a video feed of the court proceedings that does not include an image of the jury, but we've always had reporters inside the courtroom observing the jury. Tura Yorgi was in the courtroom earlier today for that. I can tell you, though, for the challenges the jury has faced in these weeks, and as they were cautioned during the jury selection process, they were faced with incredibly vivid and explicit crime scene photos and autopsy photos. They heard the very powerful and striking testimony of those who were in the synagogue building who survived, heard from police officers, including SWAT officers and tactical paramedics, about their encounters and their exchange of gunfire, their being wounded in the exchange of gunfire in that case. All of that has taken a toll for the people who experienced it firsthand. But what these jurors have gone through over these past 3 weeks with the testimony is an intense condensation of that experience. They've heard not only the testimony, they've heard recordings of 911 communications from victims while they were under siege. Some of those recordings, which are not being released publicly, we can tell you, included victims who are on the phone with authorities, and at the time, pardon us, there's a fire truck passing by the scene here, but I'll tell you, those recordings included the sound of gunfire, and those recordings actually recorded the sounds of the victims being hit and dying while that phone line to 911 was open. In terms of the other challenges this jury has faced, I'm going to reach down for a moment to pick up something. For these 63 counts that the jury had to decide, they had this guilt phase form. This is a 27-page document that they had to go through. And for some of the counts, there were as many as 4 or 5 additional questions they had to answer, specifying different legal points in the event that they found Bowers guilty. Those circumstances required this intensive work, about 2.5 hours of deliberations yesterday, another 2.5 hours of deliberations today. They did have a question at one point for the court, a rather technical question, but one that was necessary for them to hear an answer to in order to address this. They said in a section of complaints here, there were victim survivors who were cited as the basis for counts against Bowers, and their legal technical question was, did he have to know that that specific individual was in the synagogue building in order for him to have an intent to attempt to kill them? The answer came back from the judge that he couldn't answer their questions directly, that his several dozen page long written instructions that covered that, but he pointed out that in those instructions know that there was not a requirement that Bowers had specific knowledge in order to have had an intent to kill or attempt to kill those parties. So while to the general public it might say, you know, this is a circumstance where the defense is even contesting that Bowers was the killer, there are specific legal questions that were challenging for this jury. But in the end, their decision today, guilty on all counts, Shannon.
Yeah, and Bob, just an observation about that question, when you hear that the jury is asking such a technical question like that, it does give you the sense that they want to get this right and they want to make sure they're not just marking guilty and moving on with their day. They take it very seriously. A little bit further on that topic about, you know, why do we have to have all this terrible, gruesome, emotional, and distressing evidence and testimony even brought back up for so many to relive this horror that happened in our city, in our community, and how personal it feels to many Pittsburghers. When you think about all of the cases that you've covered over the years, this is part of how the U.S. justice system works. Prosecuting individuals for these acts is how justice happens in this country. Your observations just on how different this is from anything you've covered before, it's certainly different from anything I as a journalist have covered before in common pleas court.
Yeah. It's the complexity, because there are so many victims who were killed, so many victim survivors, so many public safety and first responders, police officers and paramedics who were part of the response there. Going through all of these details makes it necessary for these people who are survivors to come into court, including the law enforcement responders there, because for the jury to make a decision on any and all of these 63 counts, they need to hear the underlying facts. And that was the challenge. That was something that, as we indicated in the jury selection process, the jurors were cautioned that that was something they were to face. And there was more than one individual prospective juror who, during the questioning process, made an indication that they might have challenges with dealing with the emotional impact of that. There were some potential jurors who, even discussing the possibility of what they might have to be exposed to, displayed some level of emotion. And with that, the defense and the prosecution agreed to excuse those witnesses because of that impact.
Absolutely. And when you think about how the prosecution will move forward in the sentencing phase, something you said could be even more challenging and more complex with witnesses and evidence. Going back to motive, this isn't an armed robbery behind the motive that prosecutors are arguing. They are arguing that this person took these lives and caused this horror because of his hatred for a specific protected group, those Jewish worshipers, on the day that they were worshiping in that synagogue together.
Right, and for this phase that is coming up, as we've noted, the defense never disputed the fact that Robert Bowers was the killer, that he was the person who did these acts. They said they would offer no defense for that there was none. What the defense tried to do in this guilt phase was say, yes, so Robert Bowers posted these anti-Semitic comments online, that yes, he made comments about killing Jews, but they tried to ask the jury to see a distinction. The defense said that Bowers had a belief that his own defense attorney said was nonsensical, that somehow that Jewish people were responsible for bringing in immigrants to the United States whom Bowers regarded as invaders. They said, yes, he killed them. Yes, he killed them while they were in a synagogue. Yes, he killed them while they were worshiping, but he didn't kill them because they were Jewish. Well, the verdict here would indicate that the jury did not accept that argument, and the prosecution pointed out during its rebuttal in the closing statements that Bowers may have had in his own mind additional reasons or rationales, but that the religious hatred was the primary motivator here among what may have been more than one motivator. So, reporting live downtown, Bob Mayo, Pittsburgh's Action News 4. Back to you.
Bob, your coverage is comprehensive, it's sensitive, it's valuable to us, and all of your experience as well. Thank you, Bob Mayo from the Federal Courthouse.